Hello, and welcome to another in a series of discussions about the results of the 2016 election and how to deal with them. My name is Eitan Fenson. I've been a Silicon Valley engineer, entrepreneur, executive for the last 30 years. I've also been an activist for pursuing social justice. Sitting to my right is Lisa Farino, who is a former educator and stay-at-home mom who's starting a writing and videography business. Lisa is also intimately involved with the National Voter Corps, an organization dedicated to addressing the serious voter suppression in our elections. Sitting next to Lisa is Jerry Morrison, a retired software engineer and a self-described amateur activist. Sitting next to Jerry is Mary Enright, a retired attorney and currently an educator. The Presidential Commission has basically commanded all the states to send to it voter registration information, including Social Security numbers. And some of the states have actually begun to comply. And a news story came out last week that the White House actually inadvertently made this information for one of the states available online. So the question is this an oops? Is this done on purpose? The most benign interpretation is that the security setup in the White House is nowhere near what it needs to be or what it is within the states. So it's just another reminder of how serious a breach this is and what a threat it is to our elections and our democracy.
So I'd like to mention that
Sure.
Part of the Russian attacks were also on our state voter information polls, records, right? 21 states were attacked. I don't know how many successfully.
Right.
If they just get that information, that helps them with very selective targeting at swing voters in swing districts of swing states, which is what you need to flip an election.
Right. Absolutely.
When it's a close election. This was a close election. When you get access to those voter records, and if you have the ability to change any of them, just change a middle initial, maybe that person can't vote, right? So there's a lot of...
and Kobach already has cross-check.
You want to talk about cross-check? That's a really important
states.
thing.
30 states have accepted to be a part of this cross-check program, which is run by Kobach, actually. Even before he signed on to this Election Integrity Commission that Trump set up, he was working on cross-check, and this is a system basically whereby states can compare their voter rolls and see if there are any matches and presumably eliminate people from one roll or the other. But it's not as simple as that. Cross-check is implemented in such a way that there are a lot of false matches, because the criteria are first and last name, don't even include middle initials or middle names, and birth date in some cases. So that's a pretty flimsy basis for eliminating people from voter rolls. And we know that Jared Kushner, well, there are some inquiries as to whether he actually supplied some voting district information to the Russians as they set up their attacks with the fake bots, or the Russian fake news bots. So that it's very disturbing.
The number of people, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I read this someplace that the number of people kicked off the voter rolls from the cross-check program was on the order of 10 or 20 times as much as the margin of in the swing states.
Yep. Very interesting. Indeed. Well, given that, isn't Special Counsel Mueller enough to handle the situation? Why do people keep calling for a congressional committee or a special commission? Mary, any idea why that That isn't enough?
It would be nice, wouldn't it, if we could just say, here, Mueller, you handle it and tell us when it's over, give us the answers, put these guys in jail, and we're going to get on with our life and live happily ever after. It's not going to happen. First of all, the focus of the special counsel is to look at criminal conduct. That's the scope. Now, it's a narrow scope in that it's criminal. It's broad in that it can cover a lot of people. But it's looking at criminal conduct of the United States, of people, of Americans. It's not looking at the criminal conduct of Russia. We are going to be affected by the criminal conduct of Russia in 2018 and in 2020 and in every election that goes on. Who is it going to investigate the criminal conduct that happened in the 2016 election? Who's doing it? Well, the executive branch is usually the one that would do it.
Nobody home.
Nobody home. Trump says it never happened.
Yeah.
So the executive branch isn't looking at the criminal conduct. So that leaves Congress. Is Congress looking at it? Well, there's the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they're all looking at it. But my take on it is that they're not looking so much at what Russia did, but they're looking at the collusion aspect of it. You know, like that's sexier somehow. And so they're looking at what the collusion is, which they should do. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. But I would like to see somebody in Congress do an investigation into what Russia did to us and give us that report and make recommendations for what we can do so that our electoral system will be protected.
Indeed.
And I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen. And with Mueller, that's not his charge.
That's a very good
So
point.
it's up to us to tell Congress that this is what we want them to look into.
Lisa?
Well, here. I
Thank
agree
you.
completely. I think we have to look at, the criminality of the collusion.
Absolutely.
Now, Trump is dancing around that by saying, what's wrong with, the meetings that anybody would have taken those meetings, right? And there is some legitimacy, I hate to say it, but some people feel that there is some legitimacy to that in terms of collusion is a very ambiguous term. But I have full faith that Mueller is going to get to the bottom of the criminality of the Trump administration. I'm not afraid of that. What I'm concerned about is there are many other things that Trump is doing. Just his attacks on our democratic institutions over and over again in a myriad, a variety of ways that I think amount to the high crimes and misdemeanors that are mentioned in the Constitution. What is that? That's not. It's not clear to people what that is. It stems from the discussion among the founding fathers about what is an impeachable offense. It's not just treason.
Right.
It's not just bribery, but it's something else. It's a little more ambiguous, but it has to do with a political offense rather than a legal
rather than
offense.
something that's going to give you a felony and you're going to go to prison. It's much, much broader.
It's much broader. It could be called malfeasance. Or they call it maladministration in the Federalist Papers, I believe. But anyway, we do need to have people speaking out, including activists like us. But beyond that, our members of Congress need to step forward and explain to the people what there is to be upset about, basically. And I'm glad there are local members of Congress who take that very seriously.
Indeed. Jerry?
Yeah, let me make a breakdown between what a special counsel does and a commission and a committee, because Mary talked about some of this. So a counsel is really working to find prosecutable crimes. They work in secret, maybe for years. They don't want to, taint people who, had suspicion but didn't turn out to have a crime, or didn't turn out to have a crime that they can prove. Right? And so in the one sense, it looks for a particular category of things, and that can broaden into things that are, on the big picture to us, maybe less important, like perjury or whatever it is, that are crimes. The president is immune. That's a problem for us.
Possibly. There's some debate about that.
Okay, some debate about that. If they have intelligence on certain things but can't prove it in court, then it goes away. We never hear from it at all, right? The prosecutor does not come up with any kind of report, analysis, prescription for protecting our future elections,
Right.
right? So we need a committee or commission to do that job, or multiple ones. Now, there are various permanent committees in Congress that are doing some level of investigation. As far as I can tell, the House Intelligence Committee is maybe getting back on track, but they've been kind of, in a weird state. The Senate Intelligence Committee is doing the best job that I know of. But these folks are, doing many things, right? This is part-time of their job. And the staffing they have right now is very tiny compared to, say, the 9/11 Commission or the Watergate Commission.
There's 9 staff, and they're not all full-time, and they're not all working exclusively on this.
How many
9.
staff was working on the 9/11 Commission?
I'm sure it was a lot more than 9.
It was a large number, plus thousands of people in the Justice Department helping out, right? So I encourage our members of Congress and our senators in particular to ramp up that particular investigation.
So they can do the job that they are
Absolutely. They can do that.
supposed to be doing. They can't do it with 9 people working part-time.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into. Now, I'm assuming they will coordinate with Mueller, but still. And there's the point about creating a special, commission, not a committee, commission, right? Commission would be people who could spend their full time at this thing, right? Like the 9/11 Commission. So that has certain advantages. It has 2 disadvantages, maybe more. But for starters, those people aren't senators and Congress people. They aren't people that are directly empowered to oversee the executive branch. Bigger thing is, to get there requires passing a law. The law will get vetoed. So we don't get there. Now, another possibility is the appointment of a select committee just for this purpose. And that committee could bring together all of the various, at least say, Senate investigations into one place, which certainly has advantages. The problem, for me as a armchair tactician here is, the appointment. Who's going to get appointed to this committee, right? We're talking about Mitch McConnell probably having a lot of power in there.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell has blocked this effort from the beginning.
Yep.
He blocked Obama from announcing the Russian influence from the beginning. I see that the folks that we have on the Senate Intelligence Committee is a pretty darn good choice.
Yeah. Well, one of the good things about the Intelligence Committee from our standpoint is that both of our senators are on it, and they have acquitted themselves quite well so far in their questioning of witnesses. Very interesting. Let's get to the next question. Russia's interference in the 2016 election was not to help Trump, but to throw our political system into chaos and threaten its foundations. Russia's going to interfere in the 2018 election.
No doubt.
No question about that. What can we do about that? Mary?
Well, I'd certainly like to stop them, but what can we do? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is we could put some pressure on our Congress to provide the resources and the staff that they need to do these investigations. Secondly, I would have us advocate our investigators to, yes, focus on the collusion aspect, but we need some help before 2018. We want you to tell us what happened on 2016 and tell us what your plan is for seeing that that isn't going to happen again. And we need to really, really pressure them to do that. how they're going to do it with 9 people is beyond me. I don't know. I think another thing that I would say is that Donald Trump is not the cause of our ailing democracy. Our democracy was in trouble before Donald Trump. And even if Donald Trump were to resign, even if he were to be impeached, even if he were to go to prison, we are still going to have the same problems in our democracy, in our election system that we had before. And Lisa, you can talk about that a lot more articulately than I can, but I would suggest advocating for those kind of changes to make to restore the integrity of the electoral system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe we can't do anything about Russia right now, but we can certainly not make it so easy for them.
That's certainly true.
You know.
Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I just want to throw in a plug for the incredible spreadsheet that Mary and a team of people in Indivisible South Bay and Jerry have put together. It's called the Trump-Russia Cheat Sheet, which is like, a play on the words, of course.
That name.
But it's to lay out this really complex and extensive just array of information that includes legislation, all the key players, and the chronology of events with just, I don't know how many, like 200-300 news articles at this point that are cited and included in links. Just about anything you want to know about Russia and Trump is there. And
some things you wish you didn't know.
Yes, of course.
Wow, there's a lot to do. But what can we as individuals do to make a difference? Where can we go to get more information? I think that one of the obligations we have in this discussion is to empower and enable people who listen to us. So we just talked about what we can do focusing on the future for 2018. But what can we do to help expose what happened in the past as well? And in fact, to continue to put pressure on, as I described him, the obfuscator and obstacle in chief, to make it so that it is harder for our representatives to collaborate with him. What is it that we can do?
Well, if I were I think maybe one of the things that a member of Congress might fear most would be a really knowledgeable, intelligent advocate. Somebody who is going to really speak truth to power. But in order to do that, you have to know your facts. You have to do your research. You just can't go in there and say, I want you to do this, and if you don't do it, I'm not going to vote for you. I mean, there is something about persuasion and about arguing and about facts. And so I would encourage, even though as overwhelming as it seems to be, to learn as much about this as you can. And I will certainly promote ISB's cheat sheet on this. It's accessible on our website and it's accessible on Facebook. And in it you can find information. Well, we have a little picture. Let's see. Okay, legislation. Those are the bills. Right on that page are listed all of the bills in the U.S. Congress that have anything to do with what we're talking about. Okay, and this is another one with hearings. The hearing date is on the first column, the name of the committee. And I also want to mention, this I think was one of the things that I love about this. Every one of those things are linked. So if you want to go into the Senate Intelligence Committee there, you just click it and you're right at there. You're right there. Right. And then as you move through it, you find out, you know, who was there, what they talked about. And then if you, after the committee meeting, say you missed it and you want to find out, well, what did they really talk about? You go right back to that click and there's a video and there's a transcript right on the website. So the information is accessible. And what we have tried to do is give you sort of a map on how to get it. Now, clearly you're not going to want to go through all of it. It's a little overwhelming. So you decide what it is that you want to know about. What's on the screen here now is called a concept map, and it's some software that you can get, and it will help you out in using the cheat sheet. For example, the initial concept is in blue there, and it's called Trump-Russia litigation. And then there are all of those other other white balloons that have certain aspects having to do with the litigation.
So one of the benefits of having a live document like this cheat sheet is that you, Mary, and other members of our Trump-Russia issue group are updating it real time, making it accessible and meaningful anytime that a person gets access to it. I do want to add to the description of the cheat sheet. It was actually made available to the Huffington Post, which spread it to 40,000, an audience of 40,000 throughout. And to my mind, that is a huge endorsement of the effort that this small group has made in collecting and cataloging the information that ultimately will be necessary for us to do exactly what you suggest, Mary, which is to get our elected representatives to get serious about identifying where to look and what to look for. Jerry?
I would say the first thing to do is to support investigative journalism. You know, pick your favorite newspapers, go get a subscription to the Washington Post.
Give them your money, yeah.
And the New York Times, Guardian, LA Times, whatever. Another thing is to, as you know, as Lisa and Mary said, push on our members of Congress. But we could also be pushing on the Twitter and Facebook and other social media companies to prune their system of fake accounts, right? They shouldn't tolerate them. I know it's hard to pick them out, but the terms of service should not be allowing them, and their practices ought to try and root them out.
Yeah.
But let me go back to this. If Congress were doing a really good investigation on what exactly happened in 2016, they would be able to give us information about what you're talking about and be able to make a realistic suggestion or recommendation about what should be done.
Yeah.
We're sort of flying by the seat of our pants here saying, well, we think you should do this and we think you should do that, but we don't know what they did. We have a pretty good idea, but we don't know.
Right.
I'm not putting you down for what you said. I'm just saying that our Congress people need to do an investigation of what happened.
Right.
Not just the collusion aspect of it. What happened?
Yeah, it shouldn't be up to the New York Times and the Washington Post to keep digging out all these details. And thank goodness for them. But I agree completely
and we need various kinds of protections. Okay, I mean, the United States efforts in cybersecurity are like 95% offensive and 5% defensive. It's crazy. It's basically they've given up on defense and said, well, you know, open this game and we'll just attack, we'll counterattack. That's just ridiculous. And you know, our computer systems have not been built for security. It's not easy. It may be impossible to really get there, but we could do a whole lot better. So the first thing to note is that the thrust of the Russian attacks is not to hack votes, although they did some of that, is to hack voters.
Right.
Okay? Voters need to become savvy. So they need to know how to debunk fake news. They need to not forward something just because the title sounds good or you know, confirm some bias. They need to read the article before forwarding it. You need to go check. There are a lot of fact-checking sites on the web. You can go to Snopes, you can go to the Washington Post, you can go to several other places. I put a list of several of these on the svcr.us website. That's the Silicon Valley Courageous Resistance.
Right. Another Indivisible group.
Another Indivisible group.
He is one of the
which
leaders
I'm also
of.
a member of.
Right.
And there are, I also put lists of, you know, there's a lot of timelines that people are putting together and a lot of backstory compilations, a lot of maps of all the connections between Trump's team and Russia's team. It's a lot. And some of those, like the Washington Post one is interactive. You can roll over, say, Jared Kushner, and says, boom, here's all this, you know, links.
I also have interacted with members of our group who do feel overwhelmed and are saying, we really need to look at other issues. You know, please don't take all the air out of the room with all the stuff around Trump and Russia. And I think Trump himself feeds into this feeling with his just constant tweeting and constant distractions and
Just to wear us down.
Just all the nonsense and all the craziness.
It's not an accident.
It's not an accident. And I think his operation has two basic components: distraction and then oppression and intimidation.
That's
I mean,
right.
those two things are working together. And so every time I look at the crazy thing he's done, I also think to myself, where is the intimidation and where is the oppression happening? Because it's happening.
It is.
And as much as, you know, I want to forget about it all and just run off into the fields and go for a hike, you know,
You need to do that too.
I do that as well, but I need to come back to what is actually threatening our democracy and what can we do about it.
And we need to come back to wrapping things up. Thank you very much. Thanks to the three of you for sharing your research, your expertise, and your passion. Please join us for discussions to come as we dig more deeply into challenges that we face during these troubled and troubling times. In the spirit of answering that last question about what you can do, you can learn more about our group. So please contact us. You'll see our Facebook, website, and email information on your screen. From all of us at Indivisible South Bay, thanks for joining us. I want to leave you with two particularly appropriate quotes from Margaret Mead and Nelson Mandela. You'll see them on your screen. Thanks again, and good evening.